My name is Kylee. I'm a 21-year-old student in the Human Services program at Western Washington University. I was raised in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, but I'm originally from Flagstaff, Arizona. I'm a car lover, a dog enthusiast, and an amateur aerialist. I found my way into the Human Services program by chance, but in my short time within the program, I feel a deep sense of belonging. I've never been so excited by my education before, but here I am eagerly learning new skills and studying from professionals before me, all with the hopes to succeed in serving others one day. Throughout this video, I'm going to introduce to you different theories and systems that have helped to shape me into the person that I am today. The concept of intersectionality was originally introduced by Kimberly Crenshaw, a Black female feminist. The term was later coined in 1989. Intersectionality is a framework used for analyzing multiple identities that someone might possess and how each identity is privileged and oppressed and how the individual experiences it. One example of intersectionality within my life involves my gender and my place in society. In the US, there seems to be this deep-rooted societal belief that women are inferior to men. This was something that struck me at an early age, and I remember being a young girl and feeling extremely competitive towards the guys in my classes to prove that I was at par. This compelled me to feel like I needed to prove that I was as strong, smart, and athletic as the guys who would say I engage in an activity like a girl. This motivated me to learn to read at advanced levels in my early years in grade school, and it encouraged me to play more competitively in sports. This mindset kept me goal-oriented, but it also made me pretty defensive. I always felt like I needed to justify myself, especially when being confronted by one of my male peers. It took a lot of time to learn how to not take certain confrontations too seriously, and to not prepare for battle every time I felt threatened. This competitiveness has become a very foundational part of my personality, and it seems to be both a blessing and a curse. A second example of my intersectionality comes from my socioeconomic status and the privilege that I have of expanding my education. I grew up in a working-class household. My mom had to bust her butt to pay the bills as a single mother, and it was often very hard to make ends meet. My mom was working class, and my father was well below her. During the times when my dad had partial custody, we didn't always have a steady place to live. I never had a college fund, but we also didn't think I'd make it to a university level of education anyway. Once I started pursuing interest in expanding my education, it became apparent that in order to make it work, I'd have to maintain a full-time job. I now work over 40 hours a week in order to pay for my tuition, and I try to take every online class I can in order to keep decent availability for my job. The last example I have of intersectionality within my life comes once again from my socioeconomic status and from being a millennial. I hear all the time that people in my generation are lazy and entitled. I've heard people assume that by being a privileged millennial that I have had everything handed to me on a silver platter. This is something that has been pounded in my head from an early age by some of the older relatives in my family. Hearing this so often made me start to believe it, and for a while I felt embarrassed by many of the opportunities I was granted, as I felt like maybe I didn't earn them or I didn't deserve them. However, growing up in a working-class household, I've had to work for everything I want and everything I have. Into my adulthood, I have been given opportunities I never thought I'd have, and I'm so incredibly thankful for all the people who have believed in me and supported me along the way. But I've definitely worked really hard to get where I am, and I don't believe I'm entitled to any of it. The chaos theory is a field of study in mathematics. However, in social sciences, chaos theory is the study of complex, nonlinear systems of social complexity. It looks at the unpredictability of the nature of the system and how it somehow all makes sense in the end. The chaos theory tries to establish some sort of order within a system that otherwise may not have an obvious one. It shows that an outcome didn't happen on accident, but instead by a series of different actions and events that led up to it. One piece to the chaos theory is the butterfly effect. This is the idea that even the smallest of changes can have a massive effect. That the flapping of a single butterfly's wing today could produce a tiny change in the state of the atmosphere. One example of the butterfly effect in my life was just how I ended up in the Human Services program to begin with. Almost 2 years ago, I started working for a company of interior designers. One of the designers was a woman who always complimented my photography. Though she left the company a few months after I came on board, we still stayed in touch. She had a daughter who just opened her own private practice in psychotherapy, and she needed a portrait taken for her new website and business cards. Her daughter reached out to me and in return offered to help advise me on a good career path since her mom had told her that we had similar goals. She graduated from Western's Human Services program in 2007, and we had very similar family situations that led us both into the direction of wanting to help similar populations. After our meeting, I finally felt very confident in how to get into the field that I had been aiming for. Otherwise, I'm not sure what path I would have taken in my education. A second piece to the chaos theory is bifurcation. Bifurcation is when one single thing simply splits in two or branches off. I think one of the most prominent examples of bifurcation in my life was probably when I started doing Running Start at age 16. I did well in high school. I took advanced classes, I had a great friend group, I was fairly involved in academic activities, but I left it all behind to study in a college setting and to gain more independence and control over my education. I lost a lot of friends that year, but the experience I gained was of far greater value, and I'm infinitely thankful that I took the path I chose. That has made all the difference. The last part of chaos theory that I'm going to touch on is self-organization, the inherent tendency for systems in a chaotic state to form a new coherent pattern. One way I've noticed this within myself is while I'm in a large group of people who are spending their time socializing and mingling, I always seem to find myself on the ground with a dog and fellow dog lovers, but I've met some of my favorite people down here. The ecological systems theory views development as the product of transactions between an ever-changing person and an ever-changing environment. It specifies 5 different types of nested environmental systems within the bidirectional influences within and between the systems: the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, the macrosystem, and the chronosystem. The microsystem refers to the activities and interactions that occur in the person's immediate surroundings. One microsystem that I hold dearly is my current friend group. We do everything together. We travel, hike, play games, and we eat a ton of pizza. I go to this group for everything. We get together to celebrate the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I got accepted to study in this program, this group was the first group to congratulate me. The second layer is the mesosystem. It refers to the interconnections among the individual's immediate settings or microsystems. An interesting mesosystem in my life is the relationship between my boyfriend and my acrobatic community. Very different and unique personality types, but they still intertwine and find similar ground for me, the one person that they all have in common. The next layer is the exosystem. It consists of the contexts that children and adolescents are not part of, but which may influence their development. A very big exosystem throughout my childhood was my mom's work. Following many years of poor management, I remember multiple times as a kid where my mom's hours were cut back so severely that there were many very stressful months where we had to be very careful with budgeting to make sure we could get by. While we grow and develop as humans, we naturally become influenced by the different systems that we mingle with. One system that had a large impact on my life would be regarding our socioeconomic status. My mom was, for the most part, a single parent, and she faced the hardship of raising me on her own. Though our status was much better compared to my father, who faced large periods of homelessness, things weren't always easy for my mom either. While working at $7.25 an hour to provide for the two of us, the state deemed that she made too much money for us to qualify for any sort of financial aid. We were in this gray area where we made too much money to be granted any sort of help, but we didn't make enough to live without worry. It was this constant place of one small crisis could totally knock us out from under our feet. And I'm so thankful that that crisis never came. I had many friends who were middle class, and I remember always being so jealous and unsure why I couldn't do the same things that they did. But I also look back and have so much admiration for my mother and the way she was able to hold us down on her own. I grew up to be very humbled by the opportunities I was given, and it helped me to remember not to take the little things for granted. Another system that had great influence over my life was Ferndale School District's union, though in a way that's fairly indirect. One example that comes to mind took place when I was 12 years old. The teachers in my school district went on a strike, delaying the start of the school year by about a week and a half. The strike was for greater elementary preparation time, more early release days for teacher planning, greater financial compensation, better healthcare plans, and replacement learning improvement days. I remember my parents being really frustrated by the delayed start, as it meant they had to figure out a different daycare situation for me while I was supposed to be in school. This was very difficult financially, as it was also super unexpected. However, once my school was back in session, my teachers were all very open about the reasons behind the strike and how it impacted their personal lives. It showed me that different people are affected by these systems in different ways, that there are pros and cons to these systems, and there isn't always a win-win situation. It also showed me how these different levels of ecological systems can be impacted by one course of action. This reminds me quite a bit of the Baseball and Roots Two Perspective on Standpoint essay. Specifically, there is one quote that states, "Our standpoint opens up to see and understand a partial view of the world. Conversely, our standpoint may hide from our view what is real to others." Something that was a momentary inconvenience for my family stemmed from the long-term struggles, fears, and loss of rights for my educators. Being in the Human Services program at Western has given me a lot of inspiration for where I want to go in my life and essentially what I want to be when I grow up. In the future, I want to further my education even more. I'm considering different grad programs that I might want to engage in the future and where I want that to take me career-wise. Right now, I'm considering one day getting a master's degree in social working, where I would love to open a private practice that focuses on a multitude of areas, from clinical mental health to substance abuse to child welfare. I think that I will always continue to be influenced by socioeconomic systems as a professional. As a student, my status will have an impact on the timeliness that I continue and conclude my studies. As a professional, the socioeconomic standard in the community I engage in will impact my line of work. In the end, the best way I can think to wrap up this portfolio is a quote from Just Mercy that really resonated with me. "I understood that I don't do what I do because it's required or necessary or important. I don't do it because I have no choice. I do what I do because I'm broken too."